This discussion is not an in-depth talk about CUPS printing. It's not an in-depth talk about PM printing. What it does discuss is how in the dickens CUPS printing interfaces with PM printing, so that when you set up a CUPS printer queue, you can get a CUPS ignorant application to print to that printer. We get a lot of questions in the ArcanoA bug tracker about, well, maybe not a lot of questions, but we get a fair amount of questions about how do I don't understand how my CUPS printer, how I can print to my CUPS printer. Well, technically you can't. You have to print to your PM printer. Your PM printer will then talk to your CUPS printer. And then the output comes out the printer, hopefully. A little bit of luck and a lot of prayer. So traditional OS2 printing, the print job is sent from a PM application as GPI data. Graphics programming interface is one of the basic programming interfaces for OS2. It's been around for a really long time. And the print driver accepts that data coming in and converts that data to something understandable by the particular printer. That's the job of the print driver. Obviously, the print driver also understands the various options that are available on that model printer, so that you can direct what tray the paper should be pulled, from which tray the paper should be pulled, and whether you want the job duplex, so on and so forth. That information is in the print driver, not in the print job generally, although some applications that are more intelligent about such things can add some data to the GPI data for a number of copies and whatnot. So you can set the number of copies at the print job level or from the application. And then the print driver drops that converted data into the print queue that is specified for that particular printer. And print queues are serviced by the spooler. Anyone ever see the message that comes up, print spooler disabled, printing jobs directly? When the print spooler crashes?
Yes.
In that case, what's happening is that there is no manager for the print queue. The data is just sent to the printer directly. It's the job of the print spooler to prioritize one print queue over another print queue and hold up jobs in queues, pause them, restart them, and so forth. And obviously, because of the way the printer object has been configured, when the print driver sends the data to the queue, the output port has been specified in the job. Now, CUPS, interesting bit about CUPS printing, and just a tiny little bit of background about CUPS printing. CUPS is the native printing mechanism on Linux and Mac on the back end, because Mac on the back end is BSD, so it's very common Unix printing system to use the common Unix printing system on Mac as well. CUPS native language is PostScript. As of CUPS 1.6, the CUPS team decided that input data from most applications should now be PDF and not PostScript. Don't ask me why. But it still handles PostScript input data with aplomb. So CUPS-aware applications, such as, for instance, Qt application. Qt applications are PM printer ignorant. They know nothing about PM printer objects or anything like that. They know CUPS queues. So if you have a Qt application, like Alex's new quick editor, when you go to select a printer, the only printers that you have in your selection options are CUPS queues that you've already configured. So the CUPS Aware application will send either PostScript or PDF data to the selected CUPS queue. A CUPS queue is an input for the CUPS driver. It's not an output bin waiting to go to the CUPS printer. In PM printing, the queue is where the converted output is waiting to go to the printer. Here is where the input is waiting to go to the driver. CUPS passes that data from the queue either through one of its own internal filters, for instance PDF to PS or PS to PS if it's PostScript coming in, and that produces a finished PostScript data. This is when we're printing to a PostScript printer, a printer which understands PostScript language. CUPS then takes that finished data and sends it to the printer through the configured printer port. All well and good. Any questions so far? Okay. When CUPS is printed to a non-PostScript printer, there's a little bit more involved. In this case, the beginning is the same. The data is sent from the application to the selected CUPS queue, and then CUPS is going to pass that data through the printer's filter to convert it, or to a different type of filter, to convert it to something usable by that printer. Now that filter could be one that's specific to that model or that series of printers, or it could be another one of CUPS's built-in filters, like PDF to raster. If it's PDF data coming in, the filter will convert it to raster output for the printer. And then, just like before, the final data that's been converted to the printer's language will be passed through the configured port. Any questions about the difference between printing to a PostScript printer and printing to a non-PostScript printer under CUPS?
Where is the queue in this?
Where is the queue? When you create a CUPS printer, the first thing you need to tell it is the name of the queue for the printer. So that's a CUPS queue, and CUPS maintains the queue under etc. CUPS. So when we're comparing CUPS to PM printer objects, because really there aren't CUPS printer objects per se. There are CUPS queues and there are PM printer objects. As I mentioned before, a CUPS aware application will only provide you a selection of CUPS printers on the system. If you have no CUPS printers, you cannot print from an application that only knows to print to CUPS. It won't just automatically say, oh, you don't have any CUPS printers, so we'll print to one of your PM printers. It knows nothing of that. PM applications, conversely, don't know anything about CUPS queues. They can only print to PM printer objects. So how do we glue this together? Queues, as I mentioned before, a CUPS print queue is on the front end. So the data goes into the CUPS print queue, then goes to the filter, and then goes out.
Does the actual application create the CUPS queue to start with if you have a specific application?
No, the application does not create the CUPS queue. The CUPS queue is created when you create a CUPS printer. So in a lot of times when you're reading CUPS documentation, they say, create a queue for your printer. That means create a CUPS printer. Creating a queue for the printer is essentially telling CUPS, I have this printer and I want you to put data for it here. And then use this filter to send the data to the printer on this port. Whether it's a network port, whether it's a local port, or whatever. Also remember, CUPS is a client, we also have client server aware printer drivers, right? So you can print to, for instance, LPD printer. You can print to a network printer, or Samba. You can print to a network printer. CUPS, you can tell it. You can tell your local CUPS setup to talk to a CUPS server somewhere else via an IP address or something, and that CUPS daemon will service that output to the printer. The printer may not even be local to you. You may not even know what the address of that printer is. You just know what the queue is on the remote system. CUPS-D is the CUPS daemon. The CUPS daemon manages all of the CUPS systems. So whether it's incoming print jobs that need to go to specific filters, whether it's data coming out of the filter going to the printer, all of that is handled by the CUPS daemon. Managed by the CUPS daemon is what I should say. Contrasting with that, each PM printer object has a requisite queue managed by the PM print spooler. Output from the PM object, not output from the PM object is incorrect. Output from the PM driver is sent to the queue specific to that printer, which is in turn managed by the spooler when the spooler is running. As I say, when active, the spooler manages PM print queues. The spooler can crash. You can also have situations where there's a leftover job in a PM print queue and the spooler won't start the next time. And there are some other odd circumstances that can keep the PM spooler from starting. That doesn't mean print jobs won't run. They just won't be managed by the spooler. They'll print directly. So, when you want to create a PM print object for an existing CUPS queue, you have to use either a printer contained in a driver pack, the way you would for any other PM printer, or you can import the base information from a PPD file. A PPD PostScript page definition file is what describes a CUPS printer. Every CUPS printer, when you create an object in a print queue in CUPS for a CUPS printer, is based on the data in the PPD file for that printer. How many trays the printer has, what language the printer speaks, all of that is described in the PPD file. We have a utility called PIN, which actually imports information from that PPD file and allows us to create a PM print object for that printer. That doesn't mean that we can automatically then print to that printer using that converted object, but we know enough about the printer that we can then send that data to a CUPS queue. When you create the object, it goes to an output port called CUPS, and the properties of the CUPS output port are the server handling that CUPS queue and the name of the queue, which is the name of the CUPS printer. That's how PM knows where to send the data that it receives for that printer. So what happens? So let's say you have a PM application, knows nothing about CUPS printers whatsoever. You select the printer that you want to use in that PM application. Data from the application is GPI data. That's sent to the printer driver. The printer driver then sends that data to the CUPS queue as its output port. And CUPS handles the processing of that data to convert it to the printer's actual language and sends it out to the printer from there. So it's an interesting chain of events that takes place. The printer data is processed twice in this case. The application knows nothing of CUPS. CUPS knows nothing of the PM application or the PM driver other than to know that it's been handed data that came into the queue to process, the CUPS queue to process. So, I get this one on a regular basis too. I sent data to my printer and nothing came out. The most common question. The most common question is not I got gibberish from my printer. That's the second most common question. The most common question is I sent data to my printer and nothing came out. I also get this question from Linux users sending data to their CUPS queues and nothing comes out. And there are interesting similarities. So, if it's PM data that was sent, so you send it to your PM object that is configured to print to the CUPS queue, check the PM spooler. So if the CUPS theme installed, there may have been no way to accept the data going into the CUPS queue. So it may be stalled and sitting in the PM print queue. So open the spooler object, and all of your print queues are listed in the spooler object. See if anything's got a job, if your configured printer has a job sitting there. Every now and again, it's a good idea to open up, if you've got multiple printers, it's a good idea to, multiple print objects, I should say, it's a good idea to open up the print spooler and see. I mean, I found a job that had been sitting in there for like 4 years one time. What's that? 16 pages from what? So that may be what happened. Maybe the CUPS theme installed. If there are no jobs sitting in the PM spooler, check the CUPS job list. Now, does everyone know how to get to the CUPS job list? Okay, open up your web browser and go to localhost:631. CUPS has its own web server built in that runs on port 631. That's a well-known port. It's reserved for CUPS, and that gives you a nice CUPS printer administration GUI. Much as I would like to have a unified print configuration and management GUI on Arca OS, this is a pretty nice stopgap for us. Because as you know, we have a couple of other things we need to do first.
Can you repeat that port number?
631.
631.
And that is the same port on every platform. Mac, Linux, OS2. Steve.
Also, that thing's, you can always address it by name.
You can always,
Yeah, colon CUPS as port number. You don't have to use that port number because it's in services.
oh yeah, that's true, it's in services, right.
It's easier to remember the number.
Yeah. I forgot because I've been using the number for so long. There's a file in etc. called services. We updated it in Arca OS to make it a little more modern than the 1995 version that ships with Warp 4. And the services file lists all the well-known ports, and opposite the well-known port, it's got the actual name of the service that uses that port. And so, just like a host file works for IP addresses to symbolic names, the services file works the same way. So yeah, I forgot, that's a good one, okay.
Except it's not, in the services, it's not CUPS, it's IPP.
It's IPP. Do you have an alias in your services?
Even with IPP.
You've got a custom services file that says
They've added it.
that you can
Or I should say I have a more up-to-date one.
more up to date than we have in Arca
On the
OS.
Linux has it that way.
Ours is
Positive.
ours is pretty current. I'll
Mine
check.
could-
Maybe it's time for another
I'm not getting
update.
any of it to
Mine
work.
could be a little older though, you know, because this
Maybe
is like,
yours, because CUPS started out as IPP. So,
Okay.
anyone know what IPP means?
No.
IP printing.
Printing.
Well, I know that you
I'm not
know.
telling
Now
you.
stop
I'm not
that.
telling you.
Not getting any of it.
Internet Printing Protocol, which was developed by
31 works, but no.
That's the hardest thing.
Apple and HP.
Oh, okay, I actually thought it was Xerox, but no.
No, I don't think it was Xerox. Apple and HP. And Novell. And Novell. At least that's what they used to tell us in Novell land. So when you go to the CUPS GUI, you have a bunch of tabs across the top of the page. One of them is Jobs. Go to the Jobs tab and see what's sitting that hasn't been serviced. The Jobs tab is very interesting because it will give you a listing of what's waiting to be printed, and sometimes you'll see something it'll say printing failed. Then you have to figure out why the printing failed. So you can check the CUPS error log, and you may need to configure CUPS to give you more detail. You can restart a failed print job that's still sitting in the queue, so you can bump up the level of log verbosity, restart the print job, and then when it fails again, you'll have a decent amount of data to look into the problem yourself or open a ticket. Sometimes the failure will be something as simple as the printer's offline. Job failed to print, printer unavailable. That means I can't reach the printer. Job failed to print, printer offline means the printer's there, I can ping it, but it's not accepting new jobs. Those are the two main places to look for lost print jobs. They don't just disappear into the ether, generally. That data is stuck somewhere. There's a file of print data stuck somewhere, and there's a reason it didn't get to the ultimate destination.
If I have an old OS2 print object that's set up forever for HP printer language, and I want to switch them to CUPS, I mean, it should work, but how do I minimize the thesaurus around converting?
Well, if you want to look, first of all, if you have an HP printer driver that works for your printer and provides you the options that you need for your printer, and it's a PM driver, there's no need to switch to CUPS.
Well, but none of the new programs that use CUPS only are going to.
Okay, now so what I would do. See, here's what I would do in that case.
Yeah.
That's why I've got about 17 different printers configured.
Okay.
I would set up a CUPS queue for that printer alongside the PM one. And I would use the PM one when I'm printing from PM applications. And I would use the CUPS one when I'm printing from CUPS applications. If I find that the CUPS queue provides me more options, so sometimes, for instance, here's a perfect example. In our office in Leesburg, we have an HP 6040 MFP, which is a multifunction large laser that scans and collates and whatnot. There is no PM driver for that. The HP 9500 color laserjet driver works for that printer. 9550 works for that printer with most of the options. The CUPS driver is better for it though, because it actually matches that printer. There is a CUPS driver for the 6040. So I use the CUPS driver for the 6040. But I could just as easily, depending on what I need to print to that printer, I could just stick with the 9550 driver and then not even bother with CUPS. I haven't tossed my 9550 driver either. So the nice thing about that is I have an escape hatch for my critical applications. If I run into a CUPS problem somehow, I can still print to that printer, one way or the other.
So the CUPS driver is behind the queue. What do you have as a PM object in front of the queue?
You have a driver that is essentially a shell of a PM driver.
Specifically, what driver are you using? In this case.
In this particular case, I use the 9550 driver.
But that's not a PM driver.
It's not a PM driver.
So how do you use it in a PM object?
The 9550 driver is a PM driver. The output port is specified for cups.
Okay, so you're using the old driver,
In
the
one
front
instance,
end.
yes.
and you're using the new driver in the
Correct.
back end.
Now, here's where it gets interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
With PS Print, there is a specific 6040 driver for that printer. So I can use the PS Print printer pack for OS2 to create my PM printer object. So I have one set up like that also, which uses PS Print as the PM driver, pointing to the cups queue as the output port. And then it's all the 6040 model all the way through, from PM through cups. I can print both ways, and I have a third object for that printer which just uses the PM 9550 driver and prints directly to the printer. Now, here are the interesting differences. The 9550 PCL driver, because like many big HP printers, this printer does PCL and it does PostScript. I have better page control. So I can, pardon me. There. I have better page control with the PCL driver. So if I say I want this to print from the manual feed tray, that works in the PCL driver. The cups driver does not work that way. I can tell it from now until the cows come home to pull from tray 1, and it won't do it. So if I want to print a manual check, unless I put it in one of the other trays, one of the paper bins, I'm not going to be able to print that. So I print PCL to that printer. And I use the PM PCL driver for the 9550, which when printing black and white, 6 lines of text, works just fine for that printer. If I want to print in color and I want to do stuff like duplexing or something like that, it's a heck of a lot easier for me to use the PS Print driver for the 6040, which knows that the 6040 duplexes, is a color driver, and gives me control over my different color printing modes. It's easier for me to get the output that I want using that driver. Does that sort of answer the question? So I really have 3 different options to print to that printer.
Yeah, what I still don't understand is how you install the 2 print drivers.
How I installed the 2 print drivers?
Yeah, how do you tell it to use this up front and this in the back?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you tell it to use when you set up your PM driver, and again, there are tools in Arca OS that make this a lot easier. Alex's printer installation tool will allow you to set up a cups queue and then create the requisite PM object for that queue, pointing to that queue. But essentially what you're doing is you're creating a PM printer object, as you normally would, and you're pointing the output port to a cups port type. In the properties for the cups port type, you have the server, which is generally localhost, because you're using your local cups daemon, and the name of the queue, which is the cups printer name. So now it knows when data goes into that PM print object, and the PM, what would be the PM print, ultimately the PM print queue, to redirect to send from the PM print queue, not to a physical printer port, but to the cups daemon running on localhost, and to that queue on the cups daemon, which is the queue for that printer, named for that printer. So I have a cups queue that says HP 6040 MFP. That's my cups queue. So the output from that PM driver becomes the input to that cups queue, and then cups takes it from there and sends it to that printer.
So you're creating the cups queue through OS2.
You can, yeah, you can create the cups queue in a couple of different ways. If you're just using pure cups, you can use that cups GUI in the browser to create a cups queue. If you use the tools that come in Arca OS, you can create a cups printer, which will create the cups queue. Joe.
I think I got that part. The part above that, where you have the PM printer, the driver there. What driver, how do you select that driver?
Okay. Generally, it's going to be a PostScript driver. PS Print is the best one to choose. Now, not every printer is going to be in there because not every CUPS compatible printer is going to be a PostScript printer. So we have a couple others. Andy did the Brother Laser driver. Rich did a Brother inkjet, an Epson inkjet driver. And for the Epson inkjet driver, there is a PM printer pack for the Epson inkjet printers. So you'd be able to select that printer model in the PM print pack, and then set up your cups, and then have a cups printer that points to the filters for that particular model Epson inkjet.
All right,
If I may offer, what you're doing here is like, if you're talking about PM printing, you're doing, as far as OS2 and OS2 application is concerned, it's the output's being directed to something that converts whatever into PostScript. And that PostScript output is then queued and sent to a network printer. As it happens, that network that's receiving it is in fact CUPS. And CUPS is doing further processing to actually get it to your printer.
Precisely.
So, as from the PM application, it only knows that, okay, you want me to turn out a PostScript file. And what becomes of that thereafter is of no concern to the application, but because you've wired the things together, the CUPS, you're sending it to a particular port. It could be sent to a actual physical port, but in this case, it's being sent to the network, and PM no longer cares. It's done its job. At the other end of the network, it could be a physical printer, but in this case, no. It's just the CUPS daemon, which is sucking it up, reprocessing it, and then actually sending it to the physical printer.
I've kind of been there, I think I've got that. The part above that is the initial driver at the front, at the beginning of the process, which is the PM driver itself. What you're saying is there's either maybe something there that I can use in the IBM's or the Taylor's directory of your printers, or use some sort of generic driver or a.
When all else fails and you don't have and you know you have a PostScript printer,
Yeah.
you select a generic PostScript printer, PM printer.
Okay.
That's your best bet. A better way to do it so that you have more control over the options provided by that printer is to import the printer using PIN to your PostScript driver, to PS Print.
I've tried to do that. I've got a brother. I've had a couple brother printers here. I've got there's a new one now. It's not, they don't make it anymore. The multifunction L8850, and I've tried importing the driver, the PostScript driver through PIN, and it doesn't work. It's very frustrating.
PIN is very, very finicky.
Yeah, that's one I understand.
Jan will attest to that because he cleaned up a bunch of PIN errors that were occurring.
Now, do we have an upgraded PIN that is working?
In Arc OS, we have an updated PIN that does a much better job of importing what would otherwise be unacceptable PPDs. PIN had a habit of choking on large PPDs, and as we know, printers are becoming more complicated, not less complicated, as they now make coffee, toast, wine, cheese, So the PPD files, I used to be able to get an Epson PPD file that was just a couple hundred K. Now, I've seen PPD files, they're like megabytes inside, they're huge.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at it and you think, what could this thing do? This isn't a robot welder.
You sure? What did the PIN file, what did the PIN file say?
So what happens is, the older pin would just fail on that, just completely fail, just fall over. So Jan did a lot of work to get that working better. We're talking about pin and the work that you did to clean it up so that it was more stable. That gives you more control than just a generic PostScript printer driver. But in a pinch, and I've had to do this before, I've been at a client's office and I haven't wanted to fool around with all that stuff. I just wanted to dump something out. I've just set up a generic Apple PostScript printer and use that as my PM object.
Now, the generic Apple PostScript would work with just about anyone out there?
What it will do is it will print, for instance, to the default, use the default paper tray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have options like duplexing necessarily, unless I select one that I know has duplexing in it. But if I want to get as generic as possible, I won't select a duplexing printer. That's for sure.
So it's worth my effort to go in there, get the raw the PMD the
PPD
file and convert it through the new pin. And
yes. Now, where it becomes a trifle more complicated, and I use the term trifle very loosely, is for printers that aren't PostScript printers. Printers that have their own definition language, like the Brother lasers or like the Epson inkjets. They don't talk PostScript. So that data needs to be massaged for them so that they understand what's coming in. The filter driver, and these are all executables, and they live under the CUPS tree under Unix root in Arca OS. In the earlier versions of CUPS that Paul Smedley built, CUPS lives under its own directory tree off of the root of the boot volume. But the idea is that these filters are all executable files, and CUPS fires off the executable to take the raw data that it got in, which should be either PostScript or PDF, that it's then converted to PostScript, and hand that to the filter driver or I should say, nowadays it converts that from PostScript to PDF, unless it's, well, no, let me back up. If it's PostScript, it stays PostScript. If it's PDF, it converts that to whatever is necessary to go into the filter then for that printer to make that printer's output, or input, I should say. And then the printer, of course, is what creates the output.
So you or Andy go into the Brother sometimes a day or whatever, into the drivers that they work on, the Brother drivers. That'd be very helpful to me. That's maybe specific.
Okay.
Yeah, if
Sure.
you have time to do that.
Andy created the CUPS filters for the Brother printers. He didn't create PM objects for those Brother laser printers. That's the piece that we don't have for those Brothers. Some of those Brothers, though, I think may be listed in PS Print.
Well, those Brothers, when you go into and create a CUPS, through Alex's tool, and you see, create a CUPS printer, it puts Brother as one of the options, and you can choose then, a number of different Brother printers. If you don't see your particular Brother printer in there, you can choose like the BR laser, whatever, and there's a fair chance it's going to work. If it works, then you can actually, and I didn't create these, I just built them. Somebody else had done this. You can actually open a ticket on his GitHub site and say, this printer works, blah, I did this or whatever. Sometimes though it won't work, and you might have to make some changes, and then you tell them what those changes were, and he'll put those changes in.
But the PM drivers for those,
I've never actually messed with that.
you haven't messed with one.
All I do is I go in there and say, let the CUPS, create a CUPS printer, and it does.
You might need to
Yeah.
pick a PM printer that is close to that model that you have, even if the cups one is the exact one, just so that you get reasonably close to the capabilities of the printer for PM purposes.
I'll have to work on it. I had used, I had been using the driver, the PPD driver for the A4 4070
Mhm.
back. That seemed to work well, but I ran that again through a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and it was a disaster.
Look,
Maybe
I've
that
had
worked, yeah.
I've had issues in the past with cups on Linux where the PPD was simply inadequate for the job.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with one of the engineers at HP, and I said, you know, look, I've got this, and it was a low-end printer, a really low-end printer. I had a client who had construction trailers, and one of the tasks that I had was to set up a workstation and a printer at that location that would not be a SteelMe printer or a SteelMe workstation, and it would be relatively virus resistant in case anyone brought music from home and put a CD or something into it. So I put OpenSUSE Linux on the computer, and I set up the cheapest HP inkjet I could find, which was a $50 printer. Of course, the consumables were many times that amount, but
I'm there.
and the PPD for that printer would not work. Sometimes you print to the printer and everything goes all the way through as configured, and the printer sees the data and says, I have no idea what to do with this, and just doesn't do anything. Nothing comes out. Those are the cases where the job has truly gone into the ether, because CUPS did its job perfectly. It provided an output file that should have been understood by that printer, and it wasn't. And I contacted the guys at HP, and I got to engineering, and I said, look, I've got a PPD that I've massaged that works. Yours doesn't work. And they were adamant with me at the beginning that I was wrong, that theirs worked, until I got the engineer to actually test it on one. He said, oh, look at that. I didn't get any output either. You see? So, you know, PPD files, sometimes it's hit or miss. The manufacturer, like anything else, the guys designing the printers are not the guys writing the drivers. So the guys writing the drivers say, oh, that was a 6310, this is a 6311. Oh, we can use a 6310 PPD. No, you can't. No, you can't, because the 6311 is using some other engine from some other supplier, doesn't do that particular thing. And when that instruction is sent to it, it says, I don't know what you want. Just delete that job. And the job goes out of the printer's memory and it's gone. So, yeah, PPDs, what you need to do, and I'll have the link a little bit later, I'm getting close to the end of the slides. There's a link to the Open Printing project, and they maintain a database of printers and a database of drivers, and you can look up the printer that you're thinking of buying to see how well supported it is by CUPS. And it's really user to user, but it's a lot of users generally. And you can find the printers that work fully, the printers that work 90% of the time. Some of the manufacturers are getting better about that, and they are providing manufacturer-supported PPDs, Linux drivers, instead of just saying, well, if you want the PPD, there it is, but you're on your own. A lot of them have gotten with the program.
You bring up something else. In my experience in the past, I occasionally tried to import a Linux driver over PPD, and those were always failures. I had to grab the Windows PPD. Has your experience with that changed? Should I try to
Somewhat. Maybe we're talking about different line endings in the PPD, because the PPD file is just a text file.
Yeah.
So it could be the line endings that confused PIN before. That all should work now. The Linux PPD should work fine.
Okay, I'm going to try that again. Thank you.
Jeff, you bet.
A little digression, I'm curious about some odd thing you said. You said you reached an HP engineer.
I did.
Okay, so I recently had a problem at a relative's house. I had a nice shiny new HP printer and something went wrong. There are no manuals anymore.
No.
There's a phone number. You call the phone number and it says go to the website and look in the forum postings.
Yes.
There's no way to reach a human. I had another conversation. I have a lot of HP printers. I don't do any more business with HP. I don't buy any HP stuff. I keep my wonderful old $3,000 printers going.
I understand.
But I called up about something, and this was in the days when they had a phone number that a human answered, and he said, oh yes, I know the answer to that question, but it went EOL. I am not allowed to tell you the answer, and we've taken all the support literature down from the website. So I don't do business with that.
Don't you just love the state of the industry today?
Well, I don't do business with companies like that. There are companies which answer the phone.
Yeah.
And so how did you find an engineer?
Okay, so let me just back up to fill in some of that necessary detail. I did not say that I did this last week. It was probably a good 10 years ago.
Okay, so I got somebody on the phone. He told me it went EOL. I'm not going to give you the answer.
It may have been more than 10 years ago. It was OpenSUSE 9.1. No, sorry, not OpenSUSE. It was SUSE 9.1.
Yeah, but the numbers are going down now.
They ran out of
Before
numbers.
OpenSUSE came out. And I don't remember exactly how I worked my way to that level. It was level 2. And I may have said, I have a solution to one of your problems. And that's how I may have gotten the ticket escalated.
So it was to help them, not to help you.
Other than being a registered HP reseller, I don't really have any great pull with HP. And it's not like I could say to them, well, I'll call someone at Novell and give you a hard time.
Yeah, but that does help.
Sometimes.
Look, it's an art. There's a certain amount of luck. There's a certain amount of art, and sometimes it's just which side of the bed they got.
You know, you call the guy on the phone, you strike up a conversation, you make nice, you say, whereabouts are you based? How's the weather there? You know, and you find common ground, and then you make a friend is what happens.
Exactly.
And then you go from there. And I remember that being essentially how I got to level 2 support. Yeah, it's the state of the industry, sad to say.
And not only that, you sometimes have to call multiple times.
Sure.
And you have to go in with no expectations. That always seems to work for me.
Well, if you go in with no expectations, you're never disappointed.
The thing is, that seems to get positive results more often than not.
It's like I used to tell clients who complained to me about the throughput on their dial-up connections. I said, according to Alexander Graham Bell, this shouldn't even work. So the fact that it works at all is a miracle. So I understand you're getting 12 baud, and you're supposed to be getting 14. You're supposed to be getting 56. But hey, it's 12 and not 0. This is a good thing. Now, how many rodents do you think are chewing on that line 5 blocks down the street where the line's hanging off the pole? And you're getting 12. For God's sakes, man, be happy. So, it's all a matter of perspective. All a matter of perspective.
So you just edited the PPD file to fix that?
I edited the PPD file to fix that problem.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly, I don't remember the specifics now as to where the job was going afoul, but the printer was not even acknowledging the incoming data. In other words, it didn't even blink once. The data went from cups right on through. The job said that it had finished, and the printer didn't even acknowledge anything happened.
What did you do? Compare it to some other one and see some obvious thing that was missing?
I compared it to the previous model, and I tried using the previous model, and the previous model's PPD worked. And I thought, okay, what's the difference between the two? And then I looked at, all right, so if I filter out the difference in features between the one printer and the other printer, what am I left with for a basic print job that's different between them? And that's what I tweaked. That was my recollection. Now, I don't remember exactly what the difference was that I tweaked, but it was a single line in the PPD. One flipping line in the PPD. 4
Maybe you had a
hours.
typo. You don't know.
Could have been a typo. I honestly don't remember the specifics at this point. But the first guy was adamant with me. And then he said, well, let me get you to engineering finally. Because we were laughing about it on the phone. I remember that we were laughing about it. And he got me to level 2. And that engineer was adamant with me that, no, they tested the PPD. They test all their PPDs. Yeah, I know. You test everything. I get it. Every printer before it goes in the box, you test them all, right? And 3Com once told me that there were no 2 MAC addresses that were identical, right, in the same box.
Yeah, except when they are.
Yeah.
Except when they are. They're in the same box. One guy's on the 3rd floor, you're on the 1st floor, and 2 machines are bouncing each other off the network.
Now, why
Sure,
do
never
printers-
seen it happen.
Why do printers use these proprietary control languages? Are they more efficient than PostScript? Like, why don't they just all use that?
No, talk to a lawyer.
But is PostScript a thing that has to be licensed first of all?
Yes, and remember that when you see a printer that is non-Apple, it says PostScript compatible or PostScript emulation. Only Apple does PostScript.
You mean they own it? Apple owns PostScript?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just another piece
Yes.
of IP.
Exactly. Exactly.
PCO is only.
And of course, there are more and more companies that are developing print engines for a cheaper price.
Yeah.
And as they do that, they develop a different printer language. Sometimes it's stripped down. It's less feature rich than other languages. There you have it. That's why we've got multiple printer languages.
Capitalism.
Yep.
Well, there's some benefits. I mean,
Yeah.
Sure.
You can afford the $3,000 printer and you can afford the $300 printer.
I mean,
There
how
you
much-
go.
That's a
How much
benefit.
does PostScript add to the price of a printer?
A considerable amount.
Well, probably about $3 or something like that.
Well, nowadays, yeah. In the early days, it added a lot more money, but
Yeah.
now it's probably not
I
so
think
bad.
I heard a number in the 150 range. Back in the days when
Really?
your printers were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends how many printers they make too.
Yeah, exactly. Depends upon the deal they struck.
Yeah, the deal they struck, right?
Okay, so we talked about where to go. Okay, so to select a new printer for Arca OS, the most common question. See, so I lied again. The most common question is not what happened to my print job. The most common question is, I need to get a new printer because my old printer from 20 years ago finally stopped working. And when I priced out the part, it was more than a new printer. So what printer can I get? Check that URL. Sorry it's so small. It's https wiki.linuxfoundation.org/openprinting/database/database intro. But you can get to it if you just go to /openprinting. Check the database. Look up the model printer that you're considering. So in other words, do some shopping. Find some printer options that look like they may suit your purpose. And then look up the printer here to see how well it is, how well supported it is. You know, a lot of the all-in-ones may be supported for printing, but not supported for scanning. Some of them are supported for scanning using SANE. Again, that's outside the realm of printing. But if you're buying an all-in-one unit, you'd like it to be doing more than just one thing, because otherwise, why would you get an all-in-one unit?
Cups doesn't do scanning, does it? Cups doesn't have that function.
No, that's SANE does scanning.
Yeah.
But what I found is that a lot of your multi-functions now, you can do scanned FTP or scanned email. And so I just turn the FTP scanner. I get Peter Moylan's, fire that thing up, scan to.
Yep. A lot of folks use the scan to Samba share too.
Uh-huh.
Now that we have a decent Samba server, it works.
So.
You know, I went here and I looked for my printer, which is on Alex's list.
Yeah.
not there.
It's not there?
Yeah,
Well, then there's an answer for that.
yeah,
You can get log in with your account
yeah.
and create the entry.
Oh.
Again, the thing about open printing is that that's community based.
Okay.
So if you've got a printer that's not listed, then post it. Make sure you mention that you're running it under OS2, and it works great under OS2. And by the way, the best OS2 is
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, you will come across that where I've run into that where I actually haven't found a printer there, and I thought, what, I could be the only guy using this printer? No, I'm the last guy to see that no one has created an entry for it.
Yeah, and it's weird that it's in the HP lip, but it's not there.
But it's not there. Yeah.
And that also goes for non-working PPDs. Don't believe you're a lone stranger. You're probably not the only one that's not working for it.
Yeah.
And that
Well,
also means
yeah.
there's a probability someone else has fixed it. So you gotta ask.
Also, if it is working, people are less likely to post a comment saying it is working.
Oh, sure.
You know, it's like online reviews.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Yelp and you get the reviews of everyone who has a gripe.
Yeah.
You
But I was
know?
hoping that, they could ask here, but it's like ask. But ask who?
Yeah, they used to have forums where people would discuss their different printer
Yeah.
models. That's another possible avenue. The manufacturers, as I say, are getting better about this.
Uh-huh.
And so when you go to HP, instead of them just sending you off somewhere,
Yeah.
you can select, well, I have Linux, and they'll give you their Linux printer drivers and give you more details as to what's supported and what's been tested and what hasn't been.
Yeah.
It used to be they just sort of like sent you off on your own. Said, sure, it works, and here's a PPD, and good luck.
Yeah. But it's, I know consumables are most of it, so in a way it does make sense. If you don't like your PPD, buy a new printer.
There you go.
But, it's like,
That's the solution.
couldn't I just fix the PPD? I mean, it's just,
Bug in Windows,
yeah.
upgrade to the next version.
Well, right.
And then
That's why you're always upgrading.
That's right.
New set of bugs, right? But still.
So check the PS Print driver pack
Yeah.
and go through the motions of setting up the printer.
Yeah.
Pretend that you have it connected and see what printers are in the
Yeah.
the driver pack.
Yeah.
If it's there, that's a good sign. That's one less thing you need to do. Matt, you had a question?
How soon will this talk be posted on the website for Workstock so I can actually?
So you can print it?
I will get it up there later today or this evening. Okay, so you'll be able. Sure,
It's hard to
sure.
remember all this all at once.
I understand. There are, if you go to the NetLabs eCups page, because remember, Cups was originally and still is referred to as eCups for Ecom Station Cups, right? So the NetLabs project is track.netlabs.org/ecups. On the main track wiki page there are two links to previous Warpstock Europe discussions. Bart Van Leven did one in 2006, and Alex did one in 2011. They're both excellent presentations. I mean, I'm a little partial to Alex's for a couple of reasons. The real difference now, though, from 2011 is the change at CUPS 1.6 for PDF input versus all PostScript input. That's really the difference in terms of discussions in the presentations. But if every time you read PostScript output from application, you think PostScript or PDF output, you're fine. And both of them have neat little flow charts. Both of those presentations have neat little flow charts as to where the data is going and whatnot. I started working on flow charts for this, and I'm just not a chart guy. So after 2 hours of fooling around, trying to get the chart to look the way I want, I said, oh, the heck with this. There are already good charts out there. What am I doing? I decided to just bullet point it like I usually do. But that's a great source of additional information. The latest cups is available in the NetLabs repos via RPM. We install it with Arca OS by default. And cups has some other requirements for the PostScript massaging, like GhostScript. So GhostScript has some odd licensing issues. So it's you can bundle it with other things that are not commercial products. So as a result, we can't bundle the latest GhostScript with Arca OS, but we can bundle the latest GPL GhostScript with Arca OS. So when you run your first RPM update through ANPM after you install Arca OS, one of the first updates you're going to be presented to install is the GhostScript update to the more current GhostScript. The one that we ship should work for 99% of users out of the box, because we didn't want to ship something that didn't work, and we didn't want to ship it without the GhostScript package. But the latest GhostScript is available from NetLabs, and the latest cups, we're pretty close to the latest cups build in Arca OS right now. Yeah, I think the last time certainly in the beta, we're at the latest release version for us, which is 2.1.3 or something like that.
When you're setting up a printer, does it actually have to be online at the time, or will it assume there's going to be one there one day?
It doesn't have to be there. When you're setting it up through the when you're using one of the cups tools to create the cups queue, you have two different options. You can search for a cups printer on the network, or you can manually set up the cups printer. So if you're searching for it on the network, obviously something's got to be there to respond. If you do it through cups, when the printer responds, it does provide some hints as to what protocol to use and so on and so forth. So if it's an HP, it uses IPP, and it will present you with the IPP URL for the printer that it finds and whatnot. Otherwise, you need to know where the printer is going to be when you install it. What name you're going to either enter into the host file or have available in DNS, or the address of the printer, unless it's going to be on a local port like a USB connection. So go through the PS Print driver pack, which is the most up-to-date driver pack for most printers. See if it's there. If it's not, download the PPD and import it. And because some printers require specific filters, so it may be more than just the PPD file. You may actually need a driver like the Brother lasers and the Epson inkjets. You may need a real set of cups filter drivers for that. When we talk about a cups printer driver, we're really talking about the PPD and the filters. One or more filters. That's what we're talking about. I mean, cups is very logical. It's just not logical to us because we deal with OS2 printing. But if you didn't know what you knew about OS2 printing, cups would make perfect sense. To us, it's just a little backwards, that's all.
Well, that's part of it. The other part of it is basically the programming model. In OS2, things tend to be, yes, they're components, but they're also monolithic. Now, in the Unix world, everything is always linked together.
Mm-hmm.
And the kernel makes that very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you link together 5 pipes, no big deal. Costs a lot for us.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a look at how hard it is for Livestein to do fork.
Yep.
And it's just different. It's a different program. It's a different paradigm. So it just works differently.
Yeah. So you just have to adjust your thinking.
Yeah.
But if you keep in mind you're printing to a PM printer and the PM printer is dumping its output to cups and cups is handing the data off to the printer, then you'll be able to visualize where that print job is going and where it could have gotten lost.
Right.
And that's the real important key. Because look, when printing works, it works. We don't even think about how the data got there. It's when you're at point A and nothing comes out at point B, and then you're sitting there wondering what happened.
Yeah.
You know, and the client's sitting there at your desk waiting. Where's that copy of my tax return? And you say, I emailed you your copy of the tax return so you could print it yourself. Anyway, that's, I think that's it. That's it. Any other questions? How are we doing for time?
Very good. Perfectly.
So,
Excellent.
something I've never really thought about until just now. So if you're having to provide, and we're usually using PS Print, to go, could you use a PCL driver at that stage? And will does Cups understand that, or does it need to come in as a PostScript?
You know, I have.
Because you got at least the ones with filters. I mean, it's doing something. It's having to do something with it.
Remember that the HP lip cups drivers also include the PCL drivers, but it's PCL on the output side. I've not been able to use like the LaserJet printer pack to set up to get data, usable data to a cups queue.
Yeah.
It's got to be PDF or PostScript in the cups queue. That's the real key. So you don't want to use like an Omni printer pack or
Yeah,
something
well,
like
that makes
that.
sense, because what you're really saying is what's the end of the pipe except.
Exactly.
Wants PDF or PostScript.
Exactly. You're not going to get it from a PCL driver.
So
Right.
my printer's not hooked to this computer. It's on another computer.
Right.
Now, from a Mac, I can put the print driver and send it through on the Mac, send it to Samba, and the Samba will queue it out and it prints perfectly.
Yes.
I can't get the same thing to happen off of OS2.
It should happen from the OS2 cups.
I'm using the Samba port.
I wouldn't do it that way
Okay, but it works for Mac to do that.
because the Mac is using cups for formatting the print data.
Well, but can't I format the cups print data on the local machine and then send it?
Yes, but you format the cups print. Okay, so what you're saying is, can't you provide PostScript output from the local machine and send that PostScript output
No, I
through
have
the
to
Samba
provide
port?
PCL output.
Okay, so what you need to do is you need to use.
And I mean, I can put the cups queue on the print server. I can do that. It's not that I can't.
That's the way you want to do it. So in other words, point your PM object to cups. Let your local cups convert that to PostScript output for the printer, and then the output port from the cups from cups for that printer should be the cups server on the Mac side.
Oh, it's not on the Mac.
It's not on the Mac side. It should be the cups server on the other printer that is
Okay,
the other
there is
machine
no
that's
cup
servicing
server
that
on the
printer.
other.
The point that you want to keep in mind is that at the end of your work, I hate using the phrase at the end of the day because it's not the end of the day, it's the morning, for heaven's sakes. So at the end of your workstation's work, you should have data that is suitable to send to the printer or to a cups server that has the filters on it to convert that output from your system to the input required by the printer. So if you're printing, if it's a PCL, is it a PCL printer? It's a PCL printer.
See, here's the problem. The problem is we don't know how to manually construct the filter that takes PCL in and out to the printer.
Yeah. So your options, if you're using Samba to transfer the print data, I would use an HP lip queue that is set up for the PCL driver. So we know that we need to get PCL to the printer. And then I would send the local cups queue to that cups printer, that cups server on the remote side.
I've never been able to get it to work. I'm trying to use
Okay.
the printer I have actually would do PostScript if that one had PostScript. So I'm using its print driver into cups, and then the PCL out of cups to Samba, and I get nothing.
I need to diagram it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not quite understanding.
I need to diagram it.
If you've got PCL in your file, you simply have to do a copy to the device. Because it's going to expect raw PCL.
It's going to expect raw PCL.
But it sounds like it's not, the PCL you got here is not the PCL that you really think you have.
That may be it.
That
may be it.
Of course, it's the same name printer on the cup side.
I need to diagram it and see where we're going wrong in the process. But it should work, and there should be multiple ways of doing it. In other words, a lot of times I don't print to a queue, I print straight to the printer. But in a more congested environment, you're going to want a referee in the middle. So printing to a queue and letting something manage all of the queues that it has is a better use of the resources. It all depends. A lot of times I print just straight to the printer. I don't even fool around with anything in the middle. But I have the option with being on a NetWare backbone. My NetWare server does IPP, so I have NetWare queues, even fake queues, because under later versions of NetWare we didn't use print queues. But the idea is that I let the NetWare server manage all those jobs. So I print there and say, I want you to print to this printer that you manage. And that's my output port.
Now also, since it's network, the user gets notifications when their job's print.
And there are
It's
user
all the other
notifications.
stuff, too.
Yeah, exactly.
You really don't use the single users.
Correct.
Well, the OS2 PCL driver works just fine, so that's what I normally use. But it's a pain for Firefox, for example.
Right. I also find that PDFs print better when I print to PostScript than when I print to PCL. There's nothing less satisfying in life than printing using the PCL driver and getting a black sheet out of the printer. You look at that and you say $5 a toner, $10 a toner. Okay. I know where the life of that one went. So I use PostScript, the PostScript driver, exclusively when I print from Lucid. Exclusively, I don't use PCL at all. And I also use the graphics option in Lucid, so I can send graphics data instead of raw PostScript. So
my PCL works just fine out of Lucid.
Does it?
It can't use PostScript data, so.
Yeah, I'm lucky. What I specifically do when I look for a new printer is I look for a printer that will talk PostScript. I mean, I like PJL, and frankly, I prefer printing to HP printers in PCL using printer job language. But sometimes PostScript just works better, and even PostScript emulation. So I look for an HP printer that does both. With LaserJet 2s, we used to have a cartridge that did PostScript. Remember, you used to plug in the cartridge.
And it was expensive.
And it was expensive, exactly. Any other questions? Wonderful.
All right, thanks.
Then we're in between sessions.
Did Roderick not?
Roderick is, thank you. The programming note from yesterday is that Roderick will be on tomorrow morning instead of this morning. Because Sylvan's not on tomorrow morning, so Roderick, when we see Roderick, we have to pretend that he's Sylvan.
That's difficult.
No, they're just about the same personality. couple of exceptions.
Different heights.
We streamed that comment.
Yeah, yeah.